Welcome everybody to Bay Area Cancer Connection's 13th annual spring benefit. We're so happy that all of you could join us here today. I'm Marta Nichols. I'm a BACC volunteer, a former client, an emeritus board member. I sit on the Investment and Finance Committee. I spend a lot of time with BACC because I love the organization. This is our first ever virtual spring benefit, so we're so pleased to have you here with us. We really miss seeing your faces in person, but we're really glad that we could still find a way to gather this morning and with such a wonderful guest to talk to us. As you know, Delia Ephron is going to be joining us today. I'm so looking forward to talking to her later in the program. I've been dying to ask her so many wonderful questions. And although everyone is going to remain muted for the program, we'd love to take your questions for Delia. So if you have any, please feel free to type them in the Q&A box on your screen throughout the program. And we will try to answer as many of them at the end of the program as we can. And now to kick things off, it's my pleasure to introduce BACC's board president, Pamela Ratliff. Pamela?
Thank you, Marta. On behalf of Bay Area Cancer Connection's Board of Directors, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us on this very special day. We are grateful to our event sponsors, Siler, Nurse Registry, and Litmus. Additionally, we would like to thank our table sponsors, Challenge Match donors, and in-kind donors for their generous support. BACC's programs and services rely in great part on funding from individual philanthropy. So I want to give a heartfelt thank you in advance to all of you for giving whatever you can today and in the future to support the mission of this extraordinary organization. We have a great program in store for you. And now it is my pleasure to introduce BACC's Executive Director, Reena Bello.
Thank you, Pamela, and good morning, everyone. For those of you joining us for the first time, BACC has been serving the community for 27 years, providing practical and emotional support, information and education to people facing breast and ovarian cancer, as well as their family, friends, and care team. We have more than 40 programs and services, all offered free of charge. Cancer support has never been more important than today. And this year, we are dedicated to increasing access to cancer support services throughout the Bay Area in an effort to address the very real challenges our clients are facing during this pandemic. We would like to share with you a short video showing you our plans for how BACC is transforming the face of cancer supportive care. As Executive Director for the last 6 years, I've seen many changes in cancer treatment and support. The pandemic has certainly required a significant shift in how we help people with breast and ovarian cancer, as well as their families and friends. To say that I am proud of BACC is an understatement. I am more than proud. I am energized and inspired by the determination and the magic of this extraordinary organization. I am so proud of the BACC staff for how they quickly pivoted to virtual services and adapted what we do in order for our clients to safely continue receiving care and support, uninterrupted by physical distancing. We served 24% more people in 2020 than the year before. Many community organizations that are important to the people that we're serving have had to either pull back on services or close their doors entirely. Before the pandemic, we shared with you our vision to take BACC on the road so we could reach more people and we could make an even greater difference. Today, that vision is even more important than ever. So, I'm thrilled to share that we are launching a BACC Mobile Resource Center. In collaboration with our generous partners, we'll be able to offer our boutique services throughout the Bay Area. And as we continue to learn from our partners and our clients, and as the traditional boundaries of healthcare and cancer support shift, we'll continue to expand the Mobile Resource Center services as well as its geographic reach. Together, we'll strengthen the support network for people in the Bay Area who are facing breast and ovarian cancer, especially for the most vulnerable in our community.
I'm Barbara Cicerelli, and I'm a member of the Board of Directors at Bay Area Cancer Connections. I'm also the director of the Cancer Navigation Program here at San Francisco General Hospital. I've enjoyed a wonderful partnership with Bay Area Cancer Connections that has served our patients for over 15 years. All their services were free to our patients, services that they would otherwise not be able to afford. We are so excited over the newest project, which is their mobile boutique van, which will come out to San Francisco General and meet our patients where they're at. This has been a very tough year with COVID, and for cancer patients, it even has presented more barriers for services. They will no longer have to worry about how can they afford to get a wig, how can they afford a prosthesis, and how can they navigate online ordering these things. This means the world to us, and more importantly, it means the world to our patients.
The BACC has helped me every step of the way in my breast cancer treatment. I was so grateful to know that BACC offered a mastectomy bra and prosthetic boutique that allowed me to go in, take my time, put on, try lots of different bras and prosthetic types. I hope that with a mobile unit, the BACC would be able to provide the exact same kind of service to people that aren't able to move around or aren't able to leave their homes or their communities, and be able to get the same kind of service is wonderful.
When I was able to go into BACC with my parents, it was really helpful because, I was 45, but my parents, I'm still their daughter. And just getting them together and us looking over the information there while we were sitting on the couch and just understanding what was about to happen to me and having people around to explain that was huge, because it just takes the anxiety level down for both me and the people who are going to be my caretakers for the next 6 weeks.
We aren't just bringing wigs and hats and comfort totes, we're bringing compassion and sensitivity and understanding to people when they need it most. We have always prided ourselves on meeting people where they are emotionally. And now, with a mobile resource center, we have the opportunity to meet people physically where they are in their community, delivering the same compassionate and personalized service that BACC is respected and well known for. So thank you to everyone who has supported this effort so far. I hope many more of you will join us now and moving forward as we continue to change the face of cancer supportive care and help people in extraordinary new ways. Keep your eyes out looking for our little BACC bus. We're coming soon to a town near you. I hope you enjoyed that sneak peek at BACC's Mobile Resource Center. All of the gifts received today will go towards supporting our Mobile Resource Center and getting it ready to serve clients, as well as funding continuing operating costs to keep it on the road. As a matter of fact, the first $40,000 given today through midnight will be matched dollar for dollar by the Morgan Family Foundation and Fran Cottesbody. Thank you so much to Becky and Jim and Fran for their generous donations and incredible support. And now I have the pleasure of introducing our special guest. Best-selling author and screenwriter Delia Ephron has written books for all ages, including How to Eat Like a Child, Siracusa, and Sister, Mother, Husband, Dog. Her films include You've Got Mail, The Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants, Hanging Up, and Michael. Her hit play, Love, Loss, and What I Wore, co-written by Nora Ephron, ran for more than 2 years off-Broadway and has been performed all over the world. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Delia Ephron.
Hi, I'm Delia Efron, and I am very honored to be talking to you today about BACC and the amazing work it's doing, and a little about my own story of experiencing sort of how I came to be who I am and how I coped with cancer. I think it's the most difficult time that it's ever been for cancer patients because of the COVID pandemic. You cannot go to the hospital with someone who is going to the hospital for surgery or chemotherapy. They have to go alone. I have a close friend whose husband is having chemotherapy and she's waiting in the parking lot while he has it. I have another friend who's having surgery and she can't have someone with her before, and very rarely on days, just for an hour a day, can she have a visitor. And I think cancer patients need love and support. And the kind of support that BACC is providing now, it's just more crucial because it is very lonely to have cancer. And it is especially lonely right now. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about my life, about how I came to be who I am, and what happened when I got cancer. Excuse me. Okay, here we go. I grew up in Beverly Hills. I am the daughter of screenwriters. I'm one of 4 sisters, the second oldest, so I like to get along with everyone. At least that's my take on it. My mother was really fanatic. It was in the 50s, and she was obsessed with having career women as daughters. And all she ever said to us was, you will grow up, you will leave Los Angeles, you will go to New York, which is a much more serious place, and you will have a career. And really nothing else ever came up, except that, of course, the subtext of all this was that all 4 of us would be writers. We brought all our stories to the dinner table. Every time I said something funny, my dad shouted, "That's a great line, write it down." And I really, you would think I would have just grown up to be a writer, but actually when I was 11, I saw a movie called 7 Brides for 7 Brothers. And it was a singing and dancing romantic comedy about a woman who flips for a backwoodsman. In 1/2 hour, she marries him and moves to the backwoods to make flapjacks for him and his 6 brothers. She marries him too, of course, but I just wanted to be her. I saw the movie 16 times before I was, I don't know, 17. And I went to New York to go to college, as my mother wanted. And then I married the first man who asked me, and I moved to Providence, Rhode Island. Providence, Rhode Island was not the backwoods, but it was nowhere I was expected to be. So I'm sort of blowing my 20s. I mean, I don't have anything going on that's very interesting. I don't even think, it seemed to me in my 20s, I didn't even think that life was finite or something. And I finally end up, I'm about 28, I start a crochet business with my best friend. And we're selling things to New York department stores. Now, I have to say, the only thing I knew when I was in my 20s was that I loved New York. It was my home. I saw that place and I thought, this is who I am. And I think for all of us, there's a place we may see in our lives or find, and we think, oh, this is where I belong. And it might be where you grew up, but in my case, it wasn't. It was New York. So I would always try to go there as much as I could. And I was at a party in New York City one day, and there was an editor from Simon & Schuster. And I said to him, I know you'd never be interested in this, but would you like a book about crocheting? And he said yes. It was really quite amazing. So the next thing I knew, I had a contract. It was really that easy. I had a contract to write a book about crocheting. My first book is called The Adventurous Crocheter. And while I'm at home in Rhode Island writing instructions, I did not think I was a writer. I was just writing instructions about how to make things. I started to think, maybe I want to be a writer. So I said to my husband, my first husband, that's an important part of this story. I said to my first husband, I think I want to be a writer. And you know how important it is to speak a dream out loud. He said, I don't want you to be a writer. And I said, why? And he said, suppose you become famous. I don't want you to become famous. So I said, I promise I won't be famous. Obviously, I had to leave him. I mean, if someone wants to crush your dreams with his big fat foot, you better get out of there. And that's probably one of the most important things I will say today. Please tell it to your children. So I knew I had to leave, and it wasn't easy. And I moved back to New York. And because I really thought about this, because I made a plan. I knew I had to be I had enough money. I had enough money to last 2 years. And I thought, I'll have to be a writer in 2 years, and I probably have to get published in the New York Times. I sort of sussed it out. I mean, part of what I think is so terrible about when you get cancer is, you can't plan ahead for getting cancer. You don't know what it's going to be or how it's going to hit you or what is going to happen to your mental state afterwards, is much less your body. And I spent my life, once I messed up so badly, I spent my life making plans. And so I was almost 2 years later, I had about $500 in the bank. And I was sitting at home eating chocolate pudding my way. It was the kind of pudding you cook. It had a little skin on top, and I made a little hole, and I was scooping the pudding out. And I thought, I'm eating like a child. So I sat down and wrote 500 words about how children eat food. The Malamar, mashed potatoes. It was instructions. I knew how to write instructions. It was very deadpan, and it was funny. And I sold it to the New York Times. It was published on the last page of the Sunday magazine, and overnight, my life changed. I was offered a book contract on Monday. I wrote a book called How to Eat Like a Child and Other Lessons in Not Being a Grown-Up. It was a bestseller. I got a job at New York Magazine. I was launched. And I began to make plans my whole life. I would think, this year I'm going to write an essay. This year I'm going to learn to write a screenplay. This year I'm going to try a novel, which was the hardest for me. And I met a wonderful man who was a writer, and we got married. And he was a great nurturer, and I learned so much from him about everything. And I started collaborating with my sister, Nora. And anyway, now we are going to cut, and I'm in my middle 60s, and my sister is sick, and she's dying. And because she is sick, and she was sick for many years before, and they knew I was a bone marrow transplant match for her because she had leukemia, and they knew that, but they were actually worried about me, that because it's like the BRCA gene, AML can run in families. That's a wicked kind of leukemia, AML. And so I knew I had to take care of myself during the time that Nora was sick, in addition to worrying about her. And so I actually had a cancer doctor long before I ever had cancer. I found this wonderful woman. I knew she was very brilliant. She was my doctor, not my sister's doctor. And I needed that, and understood that about myself. And so every 6 months I would go in and I would have blood tests taken. And every 6 months you'd say, you're just fine. And I would leave. So that's 2012, my sister dies, and I'm experiencing a lot of pain over that and loss. And then in 2015, my husband died. And it's very rough. That's another thing you cannot make a plan for. I was so happy I loved where I lived. I was so happy I had good friends. I was so grateful for my writing that I still had it and I could still do it. And that's another thing about cancer. When I got sick, I could not write. And writing was really my soul. It had gotten me through every major event in my life that was difficult, and now it couldn't. So, I mean, this is another reason why BACC providing all these extra resources for you, it's just so important, because you can lose things that keep you centered. And so in any event, it's let's say it's 5 or 6 months later and it's spring, and I am so proud of myself that I have gotten I've gotten to daylight savings time, that I decide to disconnect my husband's telephone. And I call up Verizon, the phone company, and they just screw everything up. They disconnect my internet, they disconnect my telephone, they disconnect. I am screaming at them. I am going through their prompts. I'm going completely nuts. And, the only way I could survive this was to write. I mean, that's the other reason why I'm saying when I got sick, I couldn't write. And I think, how did I get through this? I wrote. And I wrote a piece about Verizon driving me crazy after my husband died. And I got that published in the New York Times. And it turns out everyone hates Verizon. So I got a ton of mail and a ton of love. And I got a letter about 4 months later from Peter. Peter and I had had 2 dates when we were 18 years old, and I didn't remember them. And to this day, I still do not remember them. But Nora had fixed us up. So my sister had blessed this. And not only that, the last trip he had taken with his late wife was to Siragusa, which is a falling down place in Sicily. And that's where my last book was set. There were he had trouble disconnecting his wife's phone. There were so many confluences, and it was the most charming note. And he was now a psychoanalyst, a psychiatrist, actually, a medical doctor, as well as a psychoanalyst, and living in the Bay Area. And he said, do you want to talk further? And so I consulted my 16 girlfriends. I mean, one of the things that also got me through cancer was my women warriors, my close girlfriends. And I wasn't making a move, I wasn't making a move after I got sick without them. And I wasn't making a move after Jerry died without them either. So I consulted them and they said, he seems like a very nice person. You should write him back. And so I did. And anyway, Peter and I start emailing, and we fall in love almost instantly. We start talking for hours at night on the phone, not FaceTime, just voices connecting the way I had when I was young. It was so instantaneous and so like any other time I had fallen in love with Jerry, for sure, 35 years before, 40 years before. And yet, of course, we were now 72 years old and death is this close, So I told him about my situation, but, it had now been 7 years of me going to the doctor and nothing happening at all. And I don't think it would have made any difference anyway to Peter, but we met. It was just meant to be. We started flying back and forth, and 4 months later, I went into the doctor and had a blood test and found that I had leukemia. Now, love and cancer were all mixed up for me in this crazy way. And, the minute you hear that diagnosis, you are completely, I think, in another world. A door is open and you've stepped through and the rest of the world is back there. And one of the things I am is a hysteric. I'm a panicker. I misunderstand. I mishear. I misconstrue. I can't keep things straight when I get anxious. And as a cancer patient, I was exactly the same, only worse. I do think if you are a very calm person who methodically goes through things, you will probably methodically deal with this as anxious as you are. I was not. And I told my doctor very quickly, don't tell me things. Just don't tell me I don't need the vocabulary. I don't want to know my odds. I want you to give me the least possible information. I trusted her completely. And Peter met her and he said, her name is Dr. Gail Robos. He said, we're on the Robos train and whatever she tells us to do, we'll do. That is not the way everyone wants to deal with cancer. There are other people who want to understand it all, who want to Google their brains out, who want to have a really good grip on what's going on. And I have to say, I didn't want that. I luckily had Peter, who never left my side. I checked into the other thing is my doctor told me immediately there was a new drug on the market that had not been there. It actually wasn't even on the market. It was still in trials. It's called CPX-351. And she was going to check me into the hospital on Tuesday and start me on it. So Peter proposed on Saturday. We got a license and a ring on Monday. I checked into the hospital Tuesday, and I got married in the hospital dining room on Saturday. The presence of someone you love being with you is just incredibly important. And I want to say I was very careful who I took on this trip with me, which was turned out to be a very long trip to a cure, because I ended up having a bone marrow transplant, and I was in the hospital ultimately 100 days. But you know who takes good care of you. You know who makes you anxious. You know who's going to dump information on you you don't want. And you know who you trust. And those things that you understand about yourself, they are very important when you go through cancer treatment. So take with you those people that you feel will make you better. There are many things that happen to you when you get cancer. You feel completely isolated. I think that, you know, I was lucky. I mean, luck is a ridiculous word to use in connection with cancer, but I was lucky that Peter understood things that I didn't. But you need to be able to talk to someone tell your doctor exactly what you need to know, what you don't want to know. Take the friends with you that are the most important, comforting people that you know, and the wisest ones. And understand that, you know, places like BACC provide a kind of helpful other thing, because you're in a world with a lot of fear and a lot of loss and confusion, and you're the center of this very small world. So a place like BACC that can bring in other people to help you get through whatever it is you need to get through, to understand what you need to understand, to help you get a wig, to help you maybe meditate, maybe talk to other people, if that's what you want. And I just want to say, because I did get through it, and I am now 3 years post-transplant, miraculously, is that I had great medicine and great love. Thank you.
All right, Delia, thank you so much for all of your thoughts and insights. This is, you know, so fascinating, I think, for all of us, and such a pleasure for all of us to get to meet you virtually, sadly, but at least to get the opportunity to hear you tell your story.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here. Really, it is.
We love, I'm certain I'm speaking for everybody on here that when I say we love having you. I would love to go back to your dinner table growing up. I'm so fascinated by this idea that there were two screenwriters raising four girls, and you all became writers in your own right. And you mentioned that, you know, like a line would come up at the dinner table, and, you know, suddenly it would sound like it was a part of a script. Can you take us through, was it kind of a foregone conclusion that you were all going to be writers and you just rebelled, or?
I think, well, I want to say that Nora became a writer the day she was born, and she owned it. So there was my mother and Nora, you know, so then I had to bite off that mountain. I did not become a writer till I was 29. Amy didn't become a writer till she was 39. And Hallie didn't become a writer till she was 49. And they're all published novelists, and they're all successful. And it was that mountain that it was like, how can you take on this family thing? Suppose you fail. And it just got worse and worse and worse. So Hallie was the last one to announce one day, I think I want to be a writer. But really, and she has degrees in other things and everything. I mean, she's really quite accomplished, but there she is writing mysteries. So I think your parents can just have the most powerful. I mean, my parents, first of all, you realize my mother was the only working mother in this neighborhood of women, and she was really proud of it. And she would never go to a PTA meeting. She wouldn't go to an open school night. She thought that was good, you know. Your mother does not do that, you know, and because she was so busy being this other person. And we bought that. I mean, all my sisters who have kids, they all go to open school nights, and they, you know, but my mother, no, I would not do that. That was like beneath me. So she didn't have close friends either. She was very odd, and she did ultimately, she died of cirrhosis. She killed herself drinking. And so, I mean, I think of her when I was young. I think of all that she gave me, all this destiny. And then I think, look how she let it destroy her. Something destroyed her. I don't know what. It's a terribly sad life.
Yeah, and yet the gift that she gave all of you is so fascinating.
Determination and drive. It was a great gift. It was a great gift. I'm grateful.
I'm also really intrigued by your relationship with your doctor and your description of kind of going through the initial diagnosis and what you ultimately learned about how to advocate for yourself. Keeping your girlfriends close, keeping Peter close, telling your doctor exactly what it is that you need. Was there something in your background or in your writing, or was it just the sort of experience of life that made you such a strong advocate for yourself and gave you the certainty to ask for exactly what you needed?
I don't think I was that strong. I think I was so panicked and so hysterical. And I just said to her, just don't tell me things like that. It wasn't like I went in and said, this is how I feel. It was more like a total hysteric saying, I don't tell me my odds. I'm too hysterical for that. But also, when Nora was sick, I had given my blood counts to her doctor and he lost them for a month. And my gynecologist said to me, take care of yourself, Delia. And someone told me about this wonderful leukemia doctor, this blood doctor, and I said, I'm going to her. And I knew she was great. I have one very close doctor friend, and he said, when it comes to this stuff, there's no one better. So I knew I was in safe hands, and she was kind of like a girlfriend, but she wasn't. She was a complete doctor. But I think the rapport you have, if you can't get both empathy and a kind of scientific brilliance from your doctor, probably you need to get another opinion, or you might need to look around. I think the doctor-patient connection is an extremely important part of cancer care. There was a moment it got very dark when I had this bone marrow transplant, and I wanted to die, and I thought I was going to die, as many people do when they get this. And my doctor said to me, she said, give me 48 hours. And if I get somewhere, give me another 48. And it was the most brilliant thing, because she gave me hope and an end game in one sentence. And sure enough, in 48 hours, something turned. I started to get better. But I felt like she knew how to talk to me. Mm-hmm. And I think you got to feel that way about your cancer doctor.
It's so true. I personally feel that with my own cancer doctor. And when my mom went through cancer, she had a doctor who was all science and no empathy. And that was a disaster for her. And I tried to advocate to get her to see somebody else. I can see, I mean, everything you're saying really resonates.
Yeah, I mean, it's very hard to tell someone, maybe you need another consultation, but I knew I was in good hands, and that was just an enormous relief to me.
So this comes from somebody whose, whole career has been about numbers and technology and finance. And I have had many people tell me that I need to write to express myself. And so I'm super intrigued by the idea that while you were going through cancer, writing was one of the hardest things for you. So I'm wondering, first of all, how did you cope? What were your coping mechanisms when writing couldn't be your outlet? And then how did you get writing back once you began to recover? How did you know that the writing juices were flowing again?
I just said to myself, I just literally didn't try to write. I just knew. I watched a lot of tennis on television. I watched basketball and baseball with Peter. I literally let my life shrink. I didn't know how else to do it. And I was so sick from having a bone marrow transplant that I couldn't walk alone. I couldn't lift anything. I had to spend all this time, months. I was on a rollator. I couldn't, I had to learn to walk alone again. I had to learn to go up and down a staircase. So there was no room for anything else. And then one day, I just thought, oh, I think I want to write about this thing I've been through, because of the love of falling in love with Peter and then getting sick. I mean, I thought maybe this is fun to write about. I don't know why I thought it would be fun, but it was.
It's
and
more fun going through it, for sure.
like that, it was back. Like it was back. But I think that's so terrifying about having cancer, that you can lose the one thing that is keeping you, that you've always trusted. When my husband was sick and Nora at the same time, they both died of cancer over a long period of time. I went to sleep one night and I thought, how am I going to get through this? And I dreamt a premise for a novel. Mm-hmm. And I woke up and wrote that novel the whole time they were sick. Wow. And I really love that book. Not because it's my best book, actually, I think Syracuse is, but The Lion is In is the most powerful book to me because it got me through. So it was really awful to lose. It was awful. I mean, your life shrinks. I mean, that's why what BACC does is so great, because you can barely cope. You're even uncomfortable in company. You don't know, do they want to hear about your cancer? Don't they want to hear about your cancer? Can you still conduct a conversation the way you used to? I mean, everything seems to go out the window. Mm-hmm. And the fact that this wonderful place, BACC, provides all these services for you when you can't really figure it out yourself, that's really great.
Mm-hmm. I couldn't agree more. I feel like I'm here because of them. I want to go, you mentioned a couple of your books, and I'd love to just hear from you. What are some of the favorite projects that you've worked on? I mean, I know we're supposed to love all of our children equally, but
we don't. I mean, we may love all our children equally, but we don't love all our books.
So what's the article that you love? What's the play that you love?
There's some that I just love because I know they're good versions of what I do. As I said, I think Nora and my first movie together that we made, which is called This Is My Life, about a single mother wanting to be a comedian and her two daughters. It was just everything about it. The subject matter, sisters and a working mother, and the fact that we were trying something for the first time and she didn't know what she was doing and I really didn't know what I was doing either, but I had to help her through. And it was just a time of great fun and great bonding. I have, as I said, The Lion is In. I have an affection for this because it saved my life. I was always, see, the thing about writing is you create a world in your head and nothing gets in there. So that's a very safe place to be. And it's a terrible thing when I got cancer to lose that ability. I think I'm a writer first. I think writing is almost a calling. And so losing it is a very difficult thing. So there's that. Then there's, I love Syracuse because I think it's one of my best works. I love Sister, Mother, Husband, Dog so much because I wrote about my mother in that, and it's the first time I really got somewhere with that. I'm very proud of that piece, but it's dark. Mm-hmm. And I wrote about 7 brides in that book. And I got to, I got to sort of tell my stories in a way that I love doing. And of course, I love How to Eat Like a Child. I mean, it was my, entry into the writing world.
That's awesome. Do you, how do you think about sort of the next, you jokingly during your talk said, you're in your 70s and death is right around the corner or something very dark. And I guess, so much good is happening for you now with, your books, with Peter, with recovery. How do you think about the next, how do you think about the future now that you're in what I would argue is a happier place for you?
Well, I thought I wasn't going to write. And then one morning I woke up and I thought I have to tell this story. And I wrote 100 pages. After not writing at all, I wrote 100 pages about a book. It's a book called Left on 10th, A Second Chance at Life and Love. And it's a story begins the night that my husband died. And it takes me through this journey of falling in love with Peter. Peter, by the way, is an expert in sexual harassment. So when I Googled him, I did Google him. I didn't Google my illness, but I did Google him. I could not believe that. It was like a feminist prank, that someone sent this amazing man to me who had testified on behalf of abused women in court. I could simply not believe that was his specialty as a shrink. So, I mean, there's so many magical things about this going on. And I think I'm so grateful. I mean, that's one thing cancer does make you feel, right? If you get through it, is that you're grateful. That I'm so happy. I mean, here we are in a pandemic. We drove this van across country, which was completely nuts. And we're now living in a house with my brother-in-law with Nora's husband, and I haven't seen anyone in months. This is the first time I've seen anyone. I feel totally crazy having a conversation.
Well, we're so glad to have you. And there are so many of us here. So it's awesome.
You. How did you have trouble? Well, you wanted to have children afterwards. It told you that, right? Yeah.
Yep.
I think it's very different to get it. How old were you?
I was 33. It was the day before my 34th birthday that I was diagnosed. And my husband and I went to my OBGYN to talk about, we want to get pregnant. So what are we supposed to do? Like, are we supposed to take tests? And she's like, you know how babies are made, right? Like, just go home and do that. And 5 minutes later, she found a lump in my breast. So we didn't get to try that for another year and a half.
Wow.
But when I went to my oncologist, to your point, my oncologist with whom I had such a wonderful connection, I went to him after I finished treatment, about 6 months after I finished treatment, and said, am I supposed to wait? And he said, all the doctors would tell you to wait. He said, there is no research that says you're supposed to wait. And I said, so we can go for it? And he said, go for it. And I got him on tape and I brought it home to my husband. And 3 months later, I was pregnant.
Oh, I'm so happy to hear that. Well, I mean,
so it really resonates with me when you talk about a doctor who cares about what you need, because at that point in his career, he had treated people of all ages,
right,
of all walks of life, but he really listened to the one thing that I cared about was that I wanted to come out of this and still be able to have kids. And that may or may not have worked. Like, mine was a happy story, but he was really helpful.
Yeah. Right. I know a lot of, your world shrinks so much when you get cancer, and then to claim it back gives it a really exciting meaning.
Which, I mean, when I think about what I most wanted was to be able to have children. What you wanted to get back to writing, you wanted to enjoy this love that's new love in your life, and I feel like that's so. It is important to find what your own North Star is. And it may not be about like, oh, look, my numbers look really good right now. Like, it's probably about something else. And you have your story about the 48 hours, the idea, like, just give me 48 hours, give me another 48 hours. Right.
Yeah. Small bite, of hope. And yet at the same time, she's respecting my pain.
So what I'm hearing from you is, okay, listen to your doctor, find somebody you connect with, advocate for what it is you need. Take it in small bites. And it sounds like that was especially hard in your situation because it was a long time in the hospital and a long time in treatment and recovery. Are there other things that you would share with folks about what you...
Well, be careful who you take on the journey with you.
Right.
That's very important. I think love matters. I believe all that. I'm just so upset now because people can't have people with them in the hospital. It's just, they're people they love. They can't have company. And I mean, I believe that's an important part of healing is the love of friends. And I think of most women as my women warriors. I think of Peter as, heroic practically that he never left that place. It's not practically heroic, it is heroic. And the other thing is, I think that you're not really prepared for how much it alters your head. I really didn't feel like I was back in the world for quite a while. I really didn't know quite even how to sit in a living room and listen to people talk or I wasn't that upset about losing my hair the way everyone was. It was by that time, it was like, am I even going to live? The other thing that was, I was told when I went through this bone marrow transplant that I had a 20% chance of survival.
Mm.
And
is that helpful?
no. And I had told my doctor, this was not my main doctor, this was my bone marrow transplant doctor. I had not yet told him this. So this came as a shock. And I then told my leukemia doctor, Dr. Robos, and she said, she said this thing, which I think is true. You are not a statistic. I mean, it's such an obvious thing to say, but it is true. I mean, she ran through everything, my beautiful heart, my great lungs, said I didn't have diabetes, all sorts of things. You're not a statistic. But then she also said, because I knew that there were a lot of side effects, terrible side effects to a bone marrow transplant, and I was scared of them. And she said, don't be scared of the cancer. No, wait, don't be scared of the treatment. Be scared of leukemia. And she took my fear, she moved it from here and focused it there. And then, my girlfriend said to me, Sarah, she said, you've just fallen in love, and so I had no choice. I had to go ahead and see what it was. And people say to you things like you're brave, and I don't know if you're brave if you just want to live.
I think those of us who've been through it understand that you just do what you just put one foot in front of the other, right?
You just do, and someone gives it a name, but it isn't what you felt.
Right.
Yeah.
So maybe on a higher note, I'm just curious what brings you joy today. Like, what's this? I'm stealing this from another of my favorite authors, but like a podcast that I listen to. But like, what is a simple moment in your life that just brings you great joy today?
Well, eating. That's big. I lost at least 20 pounds when I was sick, and I think I've enjoyed getting every pound of it back. But it's very difficult now. I think. My girlfriends, I talk on the phone with them, I FaceTime with them. I mean, we haven't seen anyone. It's very strange. On February 2020, I had a 2-year bone marrow transplant meeting with my doctor, and he said, now the likelihood of you getting it is the same as mine, and I've never had it, he said. So, I danced out of there right into COVID. All right. And that is, where I've been in this world. Oh, I will say, is she in the room? No, she isn't. I got a dog. Mm-hmm. Dogs my dog died just before, during my first treatment. And you can't be around a dog if you have, a bone marrow transplant. You can't go to a restaurant, you can't go to the theater, you can't be with anyone who has young children, you can't be around a dog, you can't be around flowers. There's so many rules. And when I knew I thought I was going to live, we went right out and got a dog. So Charlotte is in my life. That's a big thing.
We got a COVID dog, not because of COVID, but I totally am with you. Like, if we have this little clown that lives in our house now.
That's right. She is a clown. Yes.
And it's kept all of us sane, especially.
It's huge.
Yeah. So just as I'm thinking about, the conversations we've had about your doctor and the highlights, I think everybody on the call is probably going to want the name of your doctor and want to know whether she has sisters and brothers who are also in the medical profession. But you talked about how your doctor really, got you to understood what it was you were asking for and kind of met you where you were. And I'm intrigued at the connection to, what BACC tries to do for its own clients. Mm-hmm. But I'm wondering how important you think that was. Like, imagine what it was like not to have somebody like Peter who could really support you, or your doctor who could really, understand your asks, what you needed from them. Talk about the importance of that and how it changed the way you experienced your treatment and your recovery.
I can't say enough about how important that is. I think the rapport you have with your doctor and the confidence you have with them, because you're terrified. I mean, that is, I think, well, for me, I was terrified. I don't know if everyone else will be, but that's how it was for me. And I couldn't take in very much. And she seemed to understand what I could hear and what I couldn't. She was, in a way, she looked like she could be a relative, which was very comforting to me. I mean, you can't necessarily have that with your doctor, but she had authority. And she was likely to say something like, yikes. I mean, she could really say a ridiculous word in the middle of a conversation, but she is so smart. And I just think that you need to feel really great about your doctor. You just do, because you're so alone. Being a cancer patient, I mean, this is why we have to say about BACC, it really, really tries to deal with the fact that you're feeling alone. It tries to connect you with someone that can make you understand things. It will solve. I got PTSD from this horrible chemo that I had in connection with my bone marrow transplant. Aside from how sick it made me, it was a terrifying experience to have it. And because you had to, I'm not going to get into it, but I began to relive it all the time. So you need someone, you need a doctor. If you say that to her, she's going to understand that you need BACC, because they're going to help you find somebody, either help you find a therapist that's going to help you with it, or a group of women who are also experiencing this kind of side effect. They're going to help you make a connection that you need to make.
Yeah.
And that will help with the isolation. I mean, I was married to a shrink, so he's good on PTSD. But believe me, I was thinking about this awful experience for quite a long time. And I think one of the other things is that I think it is also, it's probably useless to say this, but it does fade.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, Peter gave me a Valentine called the Tunnel of Love. And he said, you know, we're going to go through this dark tunnel and we're going to get to the light. And I think that you are in a tunnel and you are going to get to the light.
Yeah.
And, you know, eventually the tunnel will be in the distance.
Yeah. Mine is farther in the distance, but I absolutely agree with you.
Yeah.
Live with it every day in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot more light. And to your point, there's a lot more light when there are people who can help.
I think this whole idea that you have of having a mobile unit that can go to areas. I mean, your life gets so little when you're sick. The idea that somebody comes to you instead of you having to search them out in some other area of the Bay Area, which, by the way, has the worst traffic I've ever been involved with. And you know, and there it is. It's right in your backyard practically. And because you can't cope with very much. So, and also a community of women know how to comfort each other. They do. Not all of them, but I'm sure everyone at BACC understands that. So you can go there and you can say, well, I don't understand this. And they'll help you figure that out. Or I need a wig, or I need to meditate, or there are all these, I need a group, you know, whatever you need, it's going to come to you. And I think now we're not even allowed to go places anymore. So, I mean, right now, having this special mobile unit that goes everywhere to us, that's huge. It's a great, great thing. We should all give money to support it.
Delia, thank you so much for all of your kind words. And, you know, supporting BACC is obviously why we're here today. So before we get into the live Q&A, I just want to remind everyone that Reena mentioned at the beginning, we've got a $40,000 challenge grant today that came from a couple of very generous donors. So at any point during the program today or after we end, we'd love it if you could give whatever you can. There are two ways you can do it. You can go to bayareacancer.org and donate there, or you can text GIVE, G-I-V-E, to 650-420-1935. Thank you for whatever you can do to support the organization. And with that, let's open it up to some live questions. Great. So I think we're going to get started with some live questions that we are getting from people who are participating today. I want to start before we get there with first an apology for the technical difficulties that we experienced with the BACC website this morning. I think so many of you joined us that we managed to take it down a couple of times. So thank you for your patience in staying with us. Thank you so much to those of you who've come back to watch the stream again. And I just want to put a plug in, because to the extent that you didn't join right away or weren't able to join right away, you may have missed a fantastic video at the beginning of our session today about our new little blue bus. BACC is going mobile, which is super exciting. We've got a new bus where we're actually going to be taking BACC services out into the community. We've always had a fantastic location where people can come and visit us. And the organization has done such a great job of kind of meeting people where they are emotionally, but now we're actually going to have the ability to meet people where they are physically. So we're super excited about that. And we hope that you all get a chance to go back to the beginning when we're done with our live Q&A and see the bus and what we're super hopeful about bringing to people outside of Palo Alto and into the broader Bay Area community. It's going to start with a mobile boutique, and some of our other services may be offered through the mobile option over time. So please take a look at that. It's something everybody at the organization is super, super excited about. So with that, Delia, again, thank you so much for being here with us today. Everybody is so excited to ask lots of questions of you, and you've been so generous with your comments about tying your own experience to the experience of so many of our clients and our fantastic volunteers and supporters. The first question we got is, how did you and your sisters all develop and keep such a sort of funny and positive nature with all of the stress of your, alcoholic, although very creative and wonderful parents? And then that same questioner just wanted to say thank you for all of the joy that you and your sister Nora gave us.
Well, thank you very much. I'm so glad that anytime we're getting joy these days is especially nice. So I'm glad I could contribute to that for sure. My family was a very magical family till I was 11, and my sister Nora was 14. And 11 is a lot of good years. It really is. And I can see in my work that I was a very happy, funny kid. And then it got very dark in the house. I can see in my work that I can go both directions. That it actually, you're always trying to turn awful things into gifts if you're writers, but that there was something that I was given by that, surviving it. Nora was a much sunnier person than me. She was 14, and I don't mean Hallie and Amy are darker, but their tones are different. And I think everyone in the family got affected differently by that. It was very strange. My parents, it was a magical household. And then my mother just tipped over. And it turned into some real madhouse. So, I don't know. That's why I think, I was born funny.
Oh, it's a gift.
Yeah, I think so. You see that in your own children, don't you? I mean, the funny kids, they pop out.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And the ones that are more serious, immediately that they are.
It seems, I'm sure you get this question a lot, and it seems kind of obvious in your family why you would become a writer, but what's your advice to people who may be aspiring to become writers if they don't come from a family of very creative people?
Well,
or even if they do.
I think, being a writer, you have to be someone who's happy alone in a room. And that if you're very extroverted, it's a harder thing to be a writer, because I'm so happy alone in a room writing. And even though in the beginning it was torture, I had to teach myself. When I got my first book contract, I freaked out. I couldn't write at all. And someone said to me, okay, in the morning, you sit down at 10 and you get up at 12. You sit down at 2 and you get up at 4 from the desk. You do not pet your plants, your animals, anything. You just do that. And you don't have to write. You just have to be there in front of it was in a typewriter. And I did it. And it took the question, will I write, out of my day? And so first writing was hard, and then it was habit, and then it was love. I think there was like that. And I think of writing as a calling, that my first husband and I, we were both writers, and we just knew that was like what we were.
Wow.
But I want to say to people who, first of all, you need habits. And second of all, I was never hip at all. So I would never look outside for what was hip to write about. And I think that's a good thing, because really that's going to change what's out there. Yeah. So I think you need to also, as a writer, think, what is my voice? What do I have to say? How do I see the world? What am I contributing? That is, everyone has a fingerprint. And you need to figure that out as a writer. What is your fingerprint? What is it that you understand? I mean, that's why some people end up sports writers, because they really understand sports. It's the thing that they love and get. And, for me, I think when I wrote How to Eat Like a Child, which just was such a spontaneous thing, I thought, oh, I get children. I didn't know that. And so there are things you begin to understand. I think right from your heart is an extremely good thing to think of.
That's awesome. I just saw a note in our chat here that somebody asked me to briefly reintroduce myself, although this really isn't about me. I guess my name is Marta Nichols. I've been a client, board member, volunteer with BACC for 16 years. And, huge fan and supporter of the organization. And I love asking people questions. So I was super excited when Reena and Amy asked me if I was willing to ask Delia questions. So that's why you're seeing my face here today. So the next question that we had was sort of each person's experience with cancer is unique and in some ways private. And yet we live now in a very, very public world. And so the question is, how do you think that somebody can maintain control over your own narrative and maintain privacy in the age of social media? And what specifically is your relationship with social media?
That's a powerful question for me. One of the first things that happened when I got truly sick and had to have a bone marrow transplant. I mean, I was truly sick from the beginning, but when they knew that was the only thing, I stopped all social media. I stopped Twitter. It was like, boom, gone. I didn't want anything to do with it. It was like, I can't, how you shed when you're sick, you become smaller and yet more who you are in certain ways. And I let go of anything that I felt was extraneous. I surrounded myself with my husband, I think of them as women warriors, my girlfriends, were incredible. And I think I actually thought to myself, how am I going to go through this? What is the best way for me to go through this? And you have to do that. Look at it. I think I mentioned this in our interview, but I wasn't someone that liked to Google things. I didn't like to know a lot of facts. I really went through my cancer treatment, which was extensive, with a phenomenal amount of ignorance. And it suited me. I told my doctor, don't tell me all these crazy words, I just, that's not who I am. I couldn't take it in. And, more of who you are. And that's because your world shrinks. In fact, one of the things I think is so great about this mobile unit is I don't think I could have got myself across town when I was really sick. I was so, and that's true whether there's COVID or whatever it is, what you're able to take in shrinks, and you have to go with that and go with your personality. If you are someone who's comforted by knowing everything, then continue to know everything. And if you're someone who isn't, don't, and maybe you have a good friend, by the way, who might track that, or your mate or somebody can do what you need to, but tell them not to tell you very much unless you ask.
That we got a great question that's very related to what you just said. I think, we're all experiencing the pandemic, together in many ways, but also very individually and personally. And, many of us are also experiencing other challenges at the same time, whether it's the loss of a job or cancer, or, the feeling of loss of social interaction, or the joy of loss of social interaction for some of us. And this person says feeling safe can be hard to come by. So can you talk to us a little bit about how you have found courage, or how you've seen others find courage when they don't feel safe?
I've been writing a lot about this now in my new book, because of my insecure childhood, because I never felt safe in my own house. My brain has receptors for not feeling safe. If I don't feel safe, it's like, I get that, and it takes over, and it's very hard for me to deal with the terror of your remission's going to be over. I was up all night the other night just because I have a bunch of checkup tests coming, and I ended up having to watch All Creatures Great and Small at 4 a.m. in order to calm down. So, I think, someone said, one of my favorite people said to me, terror is the backdrop of noise you live with all the time, and I think that is, once you get cancer, it's just there, and you have to learn to manage it in certain ways, and sometimes I'm good at it, and sometimes I'm really not good at it. Mm-hmm. I have friends that meditate. It's not something that is my temperament, so I don't quite know how to do it. It's truly hard.
Yeah. It's hard for all of us right now. I feel a little safer knowing that you're vaccinated now. Because I know that means I get vaccinated soon.
Right.
So we are close to running out of time, and I have 2 remaining questions. One is, you've mentioned in your writing how much you love bakeries, and somebody wants to know what your favorite pastry is. And I think a good question to wrap on is, people are asking what's next for you.
Oh, how wonderful. Well, my favorite, that is so hard. I have favorite flavors. Lemon is a favorite flavor. Pistachio, also favorite flavor. So anything with those things tend to be what I might go for. There's a cinnamon swirly thing at Bread's Bakery on 16th Street, just east of Union Square. No, just west of Union Square. That is really scrumptious. I'm very fond of that. Okay, and now what am I doing next? I'm writing a book called Left on 10th, my perilous love story. And it's a story of my life since my husband died. My husband of 35 years died. It starts the night of his death, and it takes me through widowhood, meeting Peter, falling in love again, and Peter and I getting through my leukemia diagnosis and my surviving a bone marrow transplant. It's very oddly very satisfying to write, because it allows me to make it something, like bake a cake out of it or something, this thing. And yet pouring through 6,000 pages, I had 6,000 pages of in-hospital records. And about page 4,250, I just thought, no more. I can't read anymore. But so, oddly enough, writing for me is a way to understand, and it's been a fantastic experience. And it's actually kind of a funny book. Well, because that's my thing, my
You get to
problem.
read it.
Yes, you do. It's coming out in spring 2022. Little Brown is publishing it, and it's left on 10th. I live on 10th Street. I just want to say that.
We'll all be watching for it.
Thank you very much.
So I want to say, first of all, thank you so much for everyone who are sending gifts in just now. We're up to $6,500. Please, give at bayareacancer.org to help support the Mobile Resource Center.
Do you believe this?
I guess we're going to lose Delia. So
That's my sister calling. Yeah.
I want to say, maybe we should get her on too.
Right. Yeah.
So thank you to everyone for sending in such thoughtful questions. Thank you again for your patience with the connection issues. Again, the whole program is going to be viewable on the BACC website, so please check that out and make sure you watch the beginning if you missed it. It was so wonderful chatting with you this morning, Delia.
Thank you. I love talking to you, Marta. It's been such a pleasure, really.
Such a treat for us. And I hope we get a chance to enjoy a cinnamon swirl together in New York sometime. So we've reached the end of our time, but I'm going to go ahead and kick it back to Reena for some closing comments.
Thank you to Delia, to Pamela, to Marta, our sponsors, our volunteers and our staff, and to everyone in our event committee, everyone who made today possible. Thank you so much again for being here and for sharing this morning with us. Please keep an eye out for our little blue bus. And on behalf of the BACC team, we hope you stay safe and stay well, and we look forward to seeing you very soon. Have a wonderful day.